But of course, I want to start with the biggest story of the week. And yes, it was what went down Saturday night in Cleveland. José Ramírez versus Tim Anderson, technical knockout. The first thing I want to mention here is Tom Hamilton's brilliant call on the Guardians radio network. Down goes Anderson. To do that in the moment, seconds after the fight actually started, it's actually astonishing to me that he would do that he would have the presence of mind to just come up with that line, which of course evokes Howard Cosell's great call, George Foreman versus Joe Frazier. I was a young child when this happened. That was the down goes Frazier line. Tom Hamilton, give him the Frick Award right now. He's been a finalist before, but give it to him for that alone. It was amazing. Now, for the fight itself and for what happened, a couple of things stood out to me most. One was what José Ramírez said after the game about why this kind of got started. And he said Tim Anderson has been disrespecting the game for a while. Now, what he was talking about with regard to that particular series was Friday night when Anderson applied a hard tag on the Guardians rookie Brian Rocchio, and Saturday when, according to Terry Francona, Anderson was chirping at Gabriel Arias. Now, we talk about letting the kids play, letting players' personalities show. And I'm all for that. A lot of fans are all for that. And yet there is a line. There's always going to be a line. And that line is not being drawn in this particular case by an old-fashioned sports writer, some fuddy-duddy fans, some people who don't have a sense of the modern player. No, it's being drawn by one of Tim Anderson's peers, one of the biggest stars in the game, actually, José Ramírez. Used to be in this sport, players police themselves. And it was a healthy thing in many ways. It was unhealthy in that players sometimes got hurt when guys threw at each other. We all understand that. But there is something to be said for what happened here. And José Ramírez evidently decided enough was enough. So you never want to see players get hurt under any circumstances. That's not something anyone would want to encourage. But at the same time, this is an example of, again, players policing themselves and one player saying to another, physically, as it turns out, we're not going to take that anymore. So that was one thing that stood out. The other thing, and this is actually a little bit more meaningful to me, what the heck has happened to Tim Anderson? And I'm talking more about Tim Anderson as a player, not as a guy. He's had a horrible year. And I go back to the WBC. This was just in March, 5 months ago. He was the talk of the WBC. I wrote a glowing column about Tim Anderson and the way he was playing. I quoted Mark DeRosa, the manager, as saying, out of any player on the U.S. team in the WBC, he has grown on me the most. Michael Young, one of DeRosa's coaches, called Tim Anderson a flat-out competitor. Mike Trout, one of the biggest stars in the game, said of Tim Anderson, he's a star. There's no other way to put it. Tim Anderson in the WBC played second base, out of position. He had an 880 OPS or so, only, 18 at bats, whatever it was. But he was brilliant. And then the season started. He missed some time with a sprained left knee. Okay. But he has not been the same player. And I want to show you some numbers that will demonstrate this. The rise and fall, actually the fall of Tim Anderson. Those are his career numbers up top. 283 batting average, 98 career home runs, 740 career OPS. This year, 244 batting average, 1 home run, 576 OPS. That is the lowest among qualified hitters. Now, Tim Anderson, the White Sox hold a club option on him for next season. I would not be surprised to see him traded this offseason with the club option. The team that gets him can exercise it if the White Sox don't exercise it first, however they want to do it. It's just stunning to see his fall. And, of course, this fight and his fall and his fight kind of exemplified all that. He needs to get it back going somehow. And I don't know what it's going to take. And I know he had some tweets that were kind of vague and cryptic over the weekend. Tim Anderson can be and was and should be a big, big time star in this game. And I hope we see that again from Tim Anderson.